evidence that these things were also used. They mirror what's called a magnetron, and perhaps you, Dr. Waterman, have more of a background that you'll know what the shape of that is. But it's like a circle in the middle with several circles on the outside of it. It's like a little sort of a motor, right, kind of thing. But right. It's anyway, it's electromagnetic, I guess.
Did you find anything while you were there that he mentioned or was familiar or connected to or could be seen at other sites like the Giza Plateau, or was it was there any common connections between anything there with any others that we know of?
Well, the connections are the placements of the stones, in which, in essence, it is a calendar, and just like, Giza and Stonehenge, when the sun's at a certain place, you have the lineup, the placement of the stones is along the same lines as Giza, in which you have the Orion, the different constellations, patterns that can be seen. And Johann Heiner has actually done more work in that particular area than Michael has. But he's actually drawn out, and it's very time consuming. I mean, the amount of investigation that's required to go to a site and start to find out what really happened there and what it's all about is very, very sophisticated stuff in the end. And unfortunately, of course, Michael doesn't have a ton of money, and neither does Johann, and yet they're making progress because obviously, they're going on to South African TV. They do have, Michael takes tours out there, but they're very small, groups of interested people, maybe 4 or 5 people at a time, that sort of thing. There's starting to be an interest in the local community. I mean, can you imagine these stones are standing here forever and there's no one even talking about them, and suddenly, Johann's flying over these stones over and over again, and he suddenly realized that what they had was something very substantial. And then what had happened was that Michael had written Slave Species of God about the genetic engineering of man, which is really fascinating if you think of the synchronicity. He wrote the book, and then Johann came to where he was speaking somewhere in South Africa, and had no idea that Michael was South African, and basically said, I got to show you something, and showed him, the pictures of Alan Adams' calendar that he'd taken, some photographs. And instantly Michael realized the connection with his work. And so from there on, they became, quite a partnership. And from that, at this point, they've constructed a whole, it's kind of like, you can imagine the kind of tourists, like, that they could be bombarded at some point once people realize what they've got at hand. That this could become a tourist attraction, and you get, you take people out in the Jeeps, and there's a whole thing that goes along with them. He's got a little museum that he's collected a lot of the stones at. He demonstrates in his talk the musical quality in the stones. It's amazing. Each stone has a different musical tone. It's very clear that the energy goes into those stones, somehow generates a sort of a vortex, and the stones, the energy moves through the stones using sound. How it's done, I mean, this is obviously very cutting edge science, but for all intents and purposes, it is how Giza was made and how Stonehenge was made. So when you say, was there a connection? Absolutely. In fact, the indicators are that this preceded both those sites, very possibly, and that this was the original, ET kind of construction that was very sophisticated technology that they tapped into using stones on the earth that had one of the biggest qualities of the stones is silicon, and it's like crystal. So it generates energy and basically, like, I guess, sort of a electrical current even. And there's a resonance that happens. So it's really, I'm not an expert. You need to listen to Michael, not me, describe all of that. But like I said, I have several hours of footage. I'll be cutting it together in a short documentary, and it should be fascinating for people. And Michael's coming to America, by the way. He's coming to do a tour and talk in various cities. So if you want Michael to come to your city, you need to email him. And I think his email address, he gave it to me the other day, obviously is something like michael@zuluplanet.com. I think that's what it is. Anyway, and I can check on that. And Michael@zuluplanet, zuluplanet.com is one of his websites, zuluplanet.com. So it's Michael@zuluplanet.com. And tell him that you are interested in finding a venue for him to speak at. He's not particular. He will talk at low cost venues. He's not going to charge a lot for his talks, but he's going to do a tour around the United States, and he's coming here to Los Angeles. And actually what happened was that he organized a talk for me and him, as many people will know, in South Africa. And we had a really incredible response. And there's a very interesting synchronicity between what I'm doing at this time with Camelot and what he's doing, because we're both dovetailing in regard to the Anunnaki. And I'm investigating, obviously, the more modern, what the Anunnaki are doing here now. And in fact, my trip to Egypt with Rebecca and I are going to Egypt. We're leading a group to Egypt, so you're welcome to join us on that trip. That's in November. And what we call the trip is On the Trail of the Anunnaki. And Michael is talking about the past, and I am talking about, the present and the future in regard to the Anunnaki. So there's a complement between our two talks, and I had a really incredible response when I went on stage in South Africa. I think I blew a lot of people away. The audience came to see Michael initially. They really didn't know who I was, most of them. There were a few that knew, but most of them didn't. But when I was done, they were very, very excited. And I did another small talk at the tail end of one of Michael's talks in a more obscure kind of workshop setting out in the field, so to speak, in a standing stone ruin also. And so what we're going to do now is I will join him, and we will both be speaking for 2 hours in Los Angeles, in Sedona, and in Phoenix, provided we can arrange the venues at a low cost. And, we'll speak to anything from, 50 to 100 people or more, depending on who we can attract. But it should be really fascinating. And so Michael's coming, I think his dates are something like the end of August. He's actually going to be here for a while touring the U.S., end of August to sometime in mid-September, or actually October, around the 1st of October or something. And on top of it, Rebecca, you'll be interested to know that I'm inviting him to join us in our Egypt trip.
Yay! That's too fun.
Yeah, and he's a big fan of yours, so it should be a lot of fun for the three of us to kind of hit the road together. And because he's coming at the Adam's calendar from the point of view of the technology behind the sound that moves the stones, and he's never been to Egypt, it's just a really good opportunity for him to do some research at the same time as educate people as to what they've got down in South Africa while we're on the road. So I think it might happen, and I think that it would be very, very interesting to go down that road with everybody. So anyway, that's kind of the summation of things. Dr. Waterman, I'm just wondering, do you have any recent updates of things? I know you were Skyping me earlier today, and you were saying some interesting things, but I don't know if any of that is releasable.
Well, before we leave your topic here, going back to Egypt, I think we're going to, we really have a lot of information talking about the timing of like the Sphinx, the pyramids. I think, there's a lot going on at the Giza Plateau right now that we are having hidden from us. And I have a feeling that we're going to find that there's a great big gap between the time frame of when the pyramid was built and when the Sphinx was built. And there are going to be